Welcome to another 1v1 here at Soccer Down Here. I'm Jason Longshore, talking Atlanta United 2, talking Atlanta United Academy, and whatever else comes up with our most frequent guest on our 1v1 series, Tony Annan. What's up, Tony?
Good afternoon. How you doing?
It's good to catch up with you. Doing well. I'm sure your schedule has changed maybe back to what it used to be now that the 2 season has concluded.
Yeah, sort of. I'm still in, but obviously we don't have a morning session now with the 2s. We've sort of given them some time off. While they enter their off season, we've kind of wound up training now. So now it's just player meetings and it's finishing off the year, So not on the field in the mornings like we have been the last 16 weeks or whatever.
But the academy has to be very interesting right now because, one, it's a new format altogether with MLS Next, but also just figuring out what games and what travel and what logistics look like at the moment.
Yeah, that's like it is for everybody, I think. It's just a challenge. We can't stay overnight anywhere. We can't stay in hotels. Our travel is like old school now. It's back to the parents bringing the players to the game, where we used to put them on buses, planes and coaches and motor buses, and now it's back to the old school, show up at the game and with your kit on and let's get on with it. So it's different. It's very difficult at times to handle for some, but it's at least we're playing. We've got games. We've got a regular schedule. We've got games every week, which is nice. A lot of places in the country are struggling with their schedule, struggling for games. Few clubs, especially MLS ones, have had a lockdown for a couple of weeks here and there. We've been very fortunate, touch wood, that our protocols have kept us pretty safe. So at least we're playing. That's the good news.
Yeah, that's a key, and it's not easy to accomplish. I wondered how it would be accomplished, and I want to get into some of that with you too. But let's talk about the way the 2 season concluded. You and I have talked about this offline, that the performances were really good. I don't think the results were always what you wanted them to be, and I'm sure that had to be really frustrating in your role. But the performances and the way the team played, was that at a level that, honestly, I think has surpassed anything we've seen with the 2s. And while the results weren't where you wanted them to be, I think you probably took some good memories out of the time as the season concluded with the 2s.
Yeah, I mean, look, in my role, I guess it's about development. It's about pushing kids through. It's about getting them through to the next level. I think we were one of the youngest teams in the league, if not the youngest at times. I think we had 8 current academy players on the field at one time in one of the games. And we played some good teams, right? We played Charleston, we played Miami, we played Birmingham, obviously Tampa, who I think Tampa and Charleston will pretty go deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, totally agree.
We were never beaten, I would say. We were never overawed by the occasion or, just dominated by the opposition. In fact, I may be biased, but I think myself and Matt kind of recapped all the games, and we were in every game, and we took the game to them a lot. So, like you said, in my position, that was success. Right? It's a young team taking it to a veteran team over and over, and yeah, we lost games because of immaturity or silly mistakes made late in the game when people are tired, and an experienced professional doesn't make that mistake where a youth player does. But for the long run, for the future, it's the best thing possible is to make that mistake late in the game and learn not to do it again. So from a broader view, the results weren't exactly stellar as far as we didn't win more than we didn't win as many games as we'd probably like to, but from a performance, from a philosophy, from a development standpoint, I think it was fantastic. And myself and Matt and Ricardo, Lewis, the staff, we had a great time. And the most positive thing about having a young team is that even though we were losing games 2-1, 3-2, 4-3, every training session was so positive. Every training session was still buzzing. So, to be honest, we took a lot of we took a lot of good feeling from that because it's tough to keep a squad alive and thumping when they're getting beat every week. So that was probably the most satisfying thing of all, is that every training session they were up for it and they went after it. So it was a success in my eyes.
How hard was it for you coming from the academy perspective where, we've always talked about this, the stressing of the development? It doesn't mean that the results don't matter, but the development is always priority one, to being in this role where it's still priority one, but you're on the touchline in these games, and I know how seriously you take it and how frustrating a mistake late can be for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a competitor like everybody else in the business, and everybody loves to win. That's why we play. That's why we coach. But I'm not obsessed with it. The A2 opportunity that was presented because of Frank's departure wasn't going to make or break my career. It's not like if I'd have won every game in A2, I'd have made my career for the next 10 years. I didn't take it that way. So my approach was still heavy on development. We still played a lot of young players and gave them opportunities. We tried to win. We didn't hide behind the word development. When we lost, we felt it. When we lost late, we were frustrated and we felt it. But again, our careers weren't being built on these results. So if you take it like that and you enter it with a realistic view of what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve, then it never gets you too far down, but it never gets you too up either. It never, you don't get too high either. So it was really enjoyable. It was good. It was frustrating at times, of course, because you're a competitor and you feel like you've set your team up to win a game. But what was more satisfying is that the group reacted to everything myself and Matt threw at them and asked them to do. They did it to the nth degree, and you can't complain about that. You can't buy that quality.
You mentioned Tampa Bay, and I wanted to get into the series with them because I'm with you. I feel like that's the epitome of an independent USL championship team. A lot of veterans, tons of experience, tons of international experience in that group. And you guys always had a great match with those. Those were just a pleasure to call, a pleasure to watch, because it was two very different styles on the field. What did you feel like your players learned in those situations with the Rowdies?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you think about the Rowdies and what they stand for, and they're a great organisation. They've got a lot of backing. I mean, their budget's probably 3 to 4 times bigger than ours. So they do have a good depth in their squad. They have very good experienced players. But I think the biggest compliment we took from them is that I think it was the last game they scored in the last 10 seconds of the game, I believe. Mm-hmm. And you thought they'd won the World Cup. There was a mass pile of players. The coach went running down the line and they won 2-1. But their reaction said everything to us. Like, they knew they were in a game. They knew we were hard to play against. They knew that it took everything they had to get a result. In fact, we handed it to them in the last game. But the relief of the win on that game for them was a massive compliment to us and to our team and our players and the guys on the field, right? Because when you see a reaction like that, you know you've got somebody kind of by the scruff of the neck because they're a little bit panicked. It was never a straightforward game with Tampa. When we went down there, they dominated us for a half and really dominated us for a half. And we had to make quite a few adjustments to come back into the game. But the games at home, I felt like we dominated those games for the most part and controlled the game. But I think, like you said, what do the players take from those games? The young players, they take a ton of experience that you can't teach on any training pitch. You can't mimic anywhere in training. It's real games against real veterans who have got some cute ideas, some savvy, and again, it's a learning experience that you cannot get anywhere else other than playing that in that game. So that's what they take from that. I mean, that's the players take, and they were so disappointed with the loss to Tampa twice at home. You could just sense like the disappointment in the players. So you know they're taking something from that game. They didn't walk off with a smile on their face, or you could have heard a pin drop in the dressing room, you know?
Right.
So, and I kept it as positive as I could, but obviously, you know, you're frustrated, and like someone like Coleman, who made a mistake and took it really hard. He came in, you know, almost in tears. You can't exactly hammer the kid, but he's got to understand that there was another decision he could have made that would have stopped that game ending in a 2-1 defeat. So those are those learning moments that you, like I say, you can't buy, you can't teach on a training pitch. They have to be in those games to learn, and hopefully in the future they don't make that mistake. So there's tons of lessons to learn from those games, and that's why putting those kids into those games is invaluable to the organisation and to their development.
Walk people through a little bit of that process. So, I mean, first with a player like Coleman Gannon, who came into the academy, then started playing with the twos on a regular basis and was one of the regulars for the team all year long. And when those moments happen, like first, how do you make the decision on bringing an academy player in? And then when those moments happen that are the learning moments, you know, how do you measure getting that point across and balancing the individual with the professional development?
Yeah, I mean, Coleman is kind of a unique situation because he's a unique kid with his attitude towards the game and his attitude towards training. He's probably one of the best trainers we have, and one of the most passionate kids about the game as well, and a constant learner. He wants everything you've got to give him. So he's kind of a unique one. Same with Will, right? We threw Will Riley up there and Coleman. I think they were the first two in. And we said, look, let's see how they do. Let's see how they handle it in training. The idea was never to put them in full games from the start. It was get them into training, let them earn their time, let them earn their way. And both kids pushed professionals who were not academy players, pushed them out the way and said, let me have a turn. Let me show you what I can do. And they took their opportunity to shine, and then they kept doing it. So the process is, look, you see something, you forecast it, you think, all right, let's put them to another test. Let's put them in a different scenario, a different environment, and see how they react. Some fail, some do okay, and some excel. Now, did I expect Coleman and Will to push players out the way that were 2 or 3 years USL players? No, I didn't. I didn't expect that. So you get pleasantly surprised by them, and then you put them in games and they don't let you down. And then week after week, they almost become your consistent performers, which is then you say, okay, they're ready for this. That doesn't mean they're ready to jump from there to the first team. They have to obviously gain more and more experience. But I think I've said it before, and I've said it to 100 people, if you give them the chance, they usually don't let you down. But there are players that crumble under the pressure, who it's too fast, the decisions are too quick to be made, and they have to take a step back, and then you try them again maybe 2-3 months later and see how their attitude is. It's like taking a kid from a U18, he's a U16, you put him on the U18s for 2 weeks, he does okay, and you put him back to the 16s. What's his attitude towards the 16s? Is it, I'm too good for this, I've been with the 18s? There's all these tests you lay out for these kids along the way that tell you if they're ready, tell you where they are. There's a couple of guys now that are in the U17 team that are 15 years old, and they're doing really well. But I may throw them back 1 week and just see how they react and see what you get out of them. Are they mature enough to say, okay, I'm going to go play here? So again, you've got to be careful pushing them too fast, too far. But when you do realise they can handle it, and you do realise they're ready for that next step, you know, you've got to keep pushing. You've got to keep testing, and you've got to say, right, go do it again, do it, and it's consistency. And I think I said to AJ Fortune, who played his first game for USL this year as well, he's 17. He's been a good academy player. He steps in, he has an okay game, and then he has an unbelievable game against Miami, I believe. And then the very next week, he was poor. He wasn't poor. He just wasn't as effective. And I said to him after the game, I said, listen, one swallow doesn't make a summer. And he looked at me like, what? I was like, one performance doesn't mean you've made it. You've got to do it week after week. And these are the lessons and these are the sort of the environments you put them in to see how they act. And if after one game where you say, you know what, you were unbelievable, if they can't do that again and again and again, then you've got to take them a step back maybe. But you've got to keep trying, right? So that's a long-winded answer, I think, but I'm trying to get the point of the process across.
Do you think that attitude is becoming more prevalent here in the U.S. with giving young players that opportunity? I feel like maybe this year in MLS and in USL Championship, we've seen more young players get the opportunity, and not just for a game here, a game there, but extended runouts.
Yeah. I mean, 2020's been a doozy of a year, right?
That's true.
But it's forced upon us some things that have been really good. Like, we didn't get any first-team players this year for A2. So we couldn't mix cohorts. So we had to make decisions on, okay, if this kid comes up, he stays up. We don't throw him up and down, he stays up. So we brought in, I think there was 9 to 10 academy kids for full-time training. And 8 of them stayed, and 2 of them went back to the academy once the academy started, and we couldn't bounce them up and down. So that was forced upon us, but it also worked out, and we also realised that, look, you got to leave them there for 2 or 3 months until you see what you want or you get what you want. AJ being a perfect example of that. Brendan Lamb is 15. When Brendan first started training with USL, there was no way he was going to play in a USL game. You know, he was just nowhere near. Even Efra, Ryan Morales. You look at him, you're going, I just don't know if he's ready for a game, you know. But all of a sudden, you're forced into doing it, or you're going, all right, he's really starting to click now. Let's try him. So that the restrictions of 2020 actually helped us and allowed those academy players to get sort of into the groove of it and then play games. And all of them did very, very well. Not one of them let themselves down. So although it was a forced environment, it's actually benefited us and opened our eyes to what could happen and what could be done. Much like Zoom has now taught big business that they don't need such a big office.
Absolutely.
So, you know, jobs at home are going to be probably more common in the future than they were before 2020. So, again, in our situation, we've been forced to play or train kids above their level, and they've adapted, and then they've played and done really well. So it's been eye-opening for us as well, you know.
I can't wait to see what the long-term impact of that could be with giving more younger players opportunities. Do you think it changes the way that you look at the academy progression, the academy structure? Are there things that you'll take from being with the twos for this run in 2020 back to the academy to change how the academy functions?
Yes and no. I think it's a two-way street, right? Because we do talk about the two still being a developmental. It's a competitive team and we want to win games, but it's also a development stage for players. Even if they are established, they can still develop. So and to be fair, Matt and I treated the sessions like academy sessions. We never did a generic session where it was just possession, shooting. Some pro training sessions are just generic, right? It's just to keep them ticking over. We put a principle of play into every session we did, and we structured the session very like the academy sessions because we felt we had such a young group. Even the pros like Jadama, who's 25, Maki, 25, we felt we could still teach them principles of play. We could still give them information and improve them technically. We felt like we could still do that. So we took a lot of what we've done in the academy and we put it into the A2 sessions. Not that Stephen and Henry weren't doing principles, because I know Stephen and Henry work off principles of play, but we set the sessions up very academy-like. And the players seemed to really enjoy it and really engage. And obviously, Matt and I shared a lot of the sessions, so Matt was involved in a lot of the coaching also. So they got a different look, they got a different voice, they got a different angle on everything, and we felt it worked really, really well. So, but there's also other things like the way we taught our press and the way we taught our build. We would now take back into our academy teams in the older age groups, because we felt like our build and our press, which are our two most important pillars of the way we play, it was clear. It was very clear the way we did it. So that will roll back into our academy teams in the older age groups to make sure that we're all aligned with our build and our press. So kind of a two-way street. We'll take and leave some stuff, but I think both the academy and the twos benefited from myself and Matt being academy guys who could kind of switch into both roles.
I've talked to you a lot about kind of just the journey from academy and an academy director to the twos. You know, the conversations you've had with Matt, who came with you on that journey, you know, what do you think he took out of it?
It's probably the happiest I've seen Matt in 4 years. I mean, he's not an unhappy guy. I think he relished being in that environment. Matt sees the game really well. For a young coach, he's got an unbelievable eye for the tactical side of the game and breaking down the game. So Matt did a ton of individual stuff with the individual player on their role in the team and their role as an individual, which I think he loved, the one-on-one interaction with the players. He stepped in and was obviously super confident to take parts of the session. So he really thrived in that environment. But I think Matt, if he took anything out of it, he realised that he could work at a higher level, as far as a professional level, and he really enjoyed doing it. So when you come from coaching young kids for the last 10, 12 years of your career and you suddenly get thrown into that, he did a ton of work behind the scenes, Matt, on breaking down the game, analysing the opposition, and I think he really enjoyed it, and he worked so hard. He made my job a lot easier to be the head coach, and he took a lot of responsibility, which sometimes a young coach can't do, you know. But Matt, like I say, he thrived in the environment, and it showed me that he's ready to make the next step in his career as well. So
that's what's been
really happy with it.
Yeah, that's what's been so fascinating about 2020 for me is, you know, we've talked about these unforeseen benefits of kind of how crazy it's been. It feels like the way this year has gone overall for the club from top to bottom is something that in a lot of ways is going to strengthen the foundations of the club. And, you know, the foundations of any successful club, in my opinion, are the academy, are that reserve team structure, because that's what really builds the DNA of who the club is.
No, absolutely. I think the goal is always to walk up to a field and say, that's Atlanta United playing. Look at the way they press, look at the way they build, look at how expansive they are in the attack, look at their transitions. That is the goal of the academy, to be what this club is all about, so that when the player does make it through, like a Wolfie, a Campbell, a Bello, the guys who have made it through, they are prepared to sort of lead the way, so to speak, of, look, this is an Atlanta United player. This is what they're capable of, and this is how they know how to play the way the club wants them to play. So the identity of the club it starts at U12. I mean, that's what the age group we start with, and we hope, and some of the 2005s, 2004s who started with us at the very beginning are now starting to come through. You hope that they have the language, the principles of play, the definitions that we give them. You hope that they're ingrained in those players, so that when they do get asked to step onto the first team pitch or the twos pitch, there's no doubt in their mind what an Atlanta United team should look like. And I think you saw that with the twos this year, even from Jackson, who leads the line, all the way through the spine of the team. We had young academy players in the team. And I don't think we ever wavered from our principles of play or our philosophy of how to play. And I think that's down to the coaching staff and the academy installing those habits, those intrinsic pieces into those players, you know?
Yeah, it's vital. It's something that stuck with me about Barcelona and players from the outside coming into Barcelona and saying things like they didn't understand the language of the game at Barca. And that's something that starts, like you said, at U12 and goes all the way through. And now you're seeing the Bellows, the Campbells go all the way through into that first team. But it's that first U12 generation that's starting to come through now where you'll really start to see all of the work that you and everybody else who's worked under you has put in.
Yeah, I mean, Efrain, I think, is the first 2004 guy we've signed as a homegrown. And he was in our first team that went to Dallas before the first team started, before our academy started.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So we were looking at photographs of that and how young he was when he went there.
Wow.
You look at Efrain, he's 6'4" nearly. He's a man. He's still got tons to learn. He's still only 16 years old. Which is, in my opinion, very young, but we're hopeful that the things he's had ingrained in him in the last 3 years, 4 years at the academy, that he will help him once he steps onto the field in a professional game, whether it be USL or first team.
So let's talk a little bit about the academy, because this is a very interesting start of the season for the academy, and it's not just because of the pandemic and everything we're trying to deal with that. The breakdown of the development academy from U.S. Soccer now into MLS Next and trying to launch that during this time. How have you navigated, outside of running the twos for right now, but how have you navigated getting games consistently for these guys?
Yeah, we entered two leagues, right? We entered ECNL and MLS Next because we were unsure of the schedule, we were unsure of how many games we would get, but what we knew was we needed as many games as possible. And one of the reasons behind that was in the last 2-3 years I hate to use the word we've dominated the games that we've played, but they've been too easy. We have 99% of what we think are the better players in the age groups. There are guys out there that are developing and getting better, and we feel like they're future players here, and we know the clubs do a great job of developing players. So we're not in a mad rush to get a young player in here when he's at a good club and on a good team.
Right.
But we needed more of a challenge. So we made a conscious effort to get more games. Most of our teams now play up in age group every week, which is funny because you get clubs shouting and screaming about beating Atlanta United, but it's usually they're beating us with a team that's a year older than us, which is fine.
Right.
We don't make excuses. We don't say, that's a younger team. That's what we want. We want to try and stretch our teams to 50% of their games need to be a big stretch, like playing a year up, playing 2 years up, so that they really struggle. 25% need to be at their own age group where they're comfortable and it's okay. And then 25% need to be games that we know we can win and build confidence and maybe try and force some good habits even, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. So we try to play as many games as we can up in age group. I think we played a local club last week and our 13s played their 14s, our 14s played their 15s, and we got drubbed 5-1 and I think it was 4-1 and 5-1. And we haven't been drubbed like that in 4 or 5 years. But that's the point we're at now, where we said, look, if these kids are going to develop, they need to be against players they cannot handle and they cannot physically handle, and they're going to have to work it out. And you know what? We played really well, played some great football, but we got done over the top probably 4 or 5 times off a direct ball. So right. That's to be expected. So, yeah, we've tried to build the schedule, and I think we'll probably continue down this path of building a really challenging schedule against older players. but making sure that we've got an adequate amount of games to develop players. Because really, training is a great tool, but the game is where the decisions are made and, the individual plays his role. So this year's been a challenge, but to be honest, I think we've came through it with a great schedule for the fall at least. And then we'll obviously regroup at Christmas and see what 2021 brings.
How has it been working with all of the local clubs and for you who've been involved with so many of the local clubs and watched their process, do you feel like they're competing at a higher level than you've seen in the past?
Yeah, I think if you look across, even like with us being in the market and taking the top maybe 15 players in each age group, I think the teams across Georgia are still very, very competitive, very, very good. And the clubs are still doing a great job with them. It's not like they've given up because Atlanta United's here. They've actually, I think they're getting more organised, they're pushing harder, they're doing more, they're becoming even more professional than they were 10 years ago. So, I mean, we watch a lot of games from obviously our local market, and the standard it hasn't dropped. We take a lot of like I said, the talented players play for us on our teams, but there's still tons of talent and there's still tons of good coaching and there's still tons of development going on in the local market. And I think we have a really good relationship with most of the clubs, and we try and be honest and we try and be transparent and we try and communicate. There's always one or two that don't want to, and we understand, but for the most part, the local clubs are still thriving, numbers-wise and quality-wise. And it looks to me like 2020 hasn't been that much of a hindrance to the sport on a grassroots level, Tons of games still being played.
What are the things you worry about with the effects of the pandemic going forward and how it could affect the academy the rest of this season for them, the fall and the spring?
I mean, I worry about being shut down again. Missing 4.5, 5 months of training and playing games in the spring. I think it hurt some of our players who came back very poorly conditioned. We tried to do our best online, but we lost a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I worry about that. I worry about some kids losing the desire and the passion to be the best. When they went, before they left, it was like chalk and cheese, some of them. They came back in and they didn't even look like the same kid. I worry about that. I worry about being shut down again. International competition is a big part of our plan, and we love to play international tournaments and travel and go into different environments that are tough. South America, Europe. We had a lot of stuff planned for 20 from April onwards, and it's not happened. And I worry about the effects of that, because we felt that was a really important piece for us, was to play international teams and set our bar as high as possible. And I just worry about missing out on those opportunities as well. But I understand there's a pandemic going on and we have to be patient, but it's still a worry that we're not going to accelerate our development as fast as we thought we could.
To wrap up, Tony, I want to ask you two things about kind of your personal development over this whole crazy year that we've had so far, and there's still plenty more to come. What's the number one thing that you take away for your personal soccer development from your experience with Atlanta United 2 this season? And what's the number one thing that you want to work on to get better at?
Oh, tough questions.
We got to end with something tough.
Yeah, of course. What did I take from personally in my personal development? I think, I'll be honest with you, it started in lockdown for me. In lockdown, I read a ton. I had about, 20 to 30 Zoom calls with coaches and directors all over the world. People in Europe, people in South America. We got on calls together and chatted a lot. I did a lot of self-analysis of myself and my career and how I got to where I am and how am I going to move on to the next part. So it started in lockdown. I felt like I came out of lockdown a little bit more aware of what I needed to do and what I needed to be better at, and I had a little bit more information from other people and experiences. So I really tried very hard to approach the two situation in a different way than I have approached most of my coaching career. And I was off the field, remember, for a year, kind of managing the whole thing. So it's like I was back on the field and I was trying to be this like a different, just approach it in a different way. And I actually did. And I think Matt even made a comment that I had changed my demeanor or the way I approach things. And I was a lot more patient and I was a lot more detailed in certain areas of coaching. So personally, I think I improved as a coach. Obviously, haven't lost my passion, haven't lost my desire to be the best I can be. But I think on the backside of it all, which is an important piece, I really believe that I improved through lockdown, not coaching, but then in the past 3 months being on field with the twos. I think I learned a lot about player management, when to say something, when not to wear my emotions on my sleeve as much as I used to keep my cards to my chest. Just pieces like that help you manage. Because when you get to that level, you can be a great coach, but if you can't manage the personalities and you can't manage the players who are getting paid, then you're on a non-starter. You're going to lose relationships. You're going to lose their desire to play for you, to play for your club, to play for your team, but most importantly, the relationship between you and them, to squeeze that 10% out of them. So I think from a personal level, that's where my improvement took place. And I plan to obviously keep trying to improve in the future. And that was such a long-winded answer, I forgot what the second question was.
Since you've improved so much, what do you still have to work on, in your opinion?
What do I need to work on? There's quite a few things, to be honest. I wouldn't pinpoint one or two. There's a lot for me to work on. I still feel like I think the biggest thing between great and good coaching is tactics, and being able to see the problems and solve the problems without taking too long to do it. Mm-hmm. To be able to adapt to changes in the game from the sideline is probably the most difficult piece. And I think that's somewhere that I can still improve, and that comes with experience. It comes with more games under your belt, more situations. At a youth level, it doesn't happen as fast. You can pretty much adapt and adjust and make little tweaks here and there, and it really makes a difference. But at the pro level, the speed of the game and obviously the quality of the players, some of these things don't translate to youth coaching, So I think the more games you have under your belt, the better. When I was younger, I thought experience wasn't the be-all and end-all of everything, but I'm starting to understand now as I get older that experience counts for a hell of a lot. And the more situations you're in and the more difficult situations you're in, the more you learn and the quicker you learn. So I think I've got so much room to improve as a coach, but I think I've made steps forward as a coach as well. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's great. That's why I ask you the hard questions, because you answer them really well, and you also, I think, inspire others, because I've had people say that about when you talked about during the lockdown, how much work you were putting in to try to get better, while, look, it was easy to do nothing. It was easy to be frustrated. It was easy to just chill out. And you putting in that work at your level, I think others see that and say, hey, I got to keep pushing too. I got to keep getting better. One thing you didn't mention, though, is now you're an author, and you did that during lockdown on the side of all of the other stuff.
That book took me like 40 minutes to write.
But that's awesome. Tell everybody about it.
Well, obviously I spent more time with my kids than I've ever had, which was a silver lining to all of the lockdown frustrations, was getting to spend time with my kids and really sort of get to know them a little bit more than I'm in soccer. You're here, there, and everywhere, and it's kind of all of a sudden my kids are 5 and 3, and I'm sitting there going, where did this come from? So I read to them every night. We read every morning, we read every night, and I just started thinking these books are terrible. Like this is like, what am I reading to my kids here? So I said, I could do this. I could write a book for kids, but I'm going to put a message in it. I'm going to put So I sat down one morning with a cup of coffee and I wrote this book, and it's all rhyming, and look, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a math person. I'm more of a creative art, ideas guy. So it kind of came pretty easy to me, and it was all rhyming. So I've done 4 books, and each one has a message. Be kind, don't bully. There's an equality one. There's one about not being afraid. That was the first one. So my son doesn't love the dark, right? So he's afraid of the dark, and I wrote a book about so the character's the bear with the crazy hair. He looks like Valderrama and Yogi Bear mixed up.
Nice.
And it's about him realizing that the dark's not so scary, and noises in the dark can't hurt you and stuff like that. And I sent it to my friend. He loved it. And then another friend loved it. And then my wife was like, this is really good, blah, blah. So it got published. And it sold about 150 copies in 3 days off Instagram. So
that's awesome.
It just sort of took its own little, weird turn. And so I just wrote another few. But I haven't got them published yet. They're not published yet. So I want to give Peppa Pig a run for her money.
There we go. I like it. Oh, that's awesome. So you've been very productive in 2020. You still got about 2.5 months to go. Plenty more to do.
Slowing down now, I guess. I've been on it and on. Back to the original point about people inspiring people. I never thought I'd be a person that inspire other people. But in a few podcasts and stuff we did over lockdown, I think the most important piece that I kept saying over and over was to be honest with yourself and understand. Like you said to me, what did you improve? How did you? And I literally looked at myself and said, right, what have I done well? What have I done badly? What am I doing, okay? What can it be better? But if you're not honest with yourself and you can't look at yourself and go, you know what? You're not that good. Like you think you are, or you feel like you are. But what is it that you do badly? Do you communicate badly? Do you, I think reflecting and being honest and keeping your feet on the ground and saying, look, you're never going to be as good as you think you are or you want to be. It's a constant journey to get there. And I think the biggest thing is you have to be honest. You've got to try and be as humble as you can and be authentic. I say that to my guys all the time. Like, just be authentic. Don't lie. Don't talk about something you're not really sure about what you're talking about. Don't pretend to be somebody that you're not, because you'll always get found out eventually. You can't keep that act up forever. So just be authentic, be honest, be humble, and tell it like it is. And sometimes people will say, you know what, I don't like the way he tells it like it is, but that's their opinion of it. And that's how I think you continue as a coach to grow, is if you constantly just say, right, what did I do well, what did I do wrong? And I think young coaches today, they want to get from A to Z without taking all the steps between.
Yep.
They want the best team. They want to work with the best people. They want more money. They want more status. But sometimes that takes a long time. And I'm not saying you can't get there, but sometimes it takes a while. And if you're not patient and you're not prepared to put in the hours and you're not prepared to, I don't know, work for free or go listen to somebody talk because you think you know more than they do, it's a tough road if that's the attitude you take. And I'll be honest with you, when I was younger, I kind of felt that way. But now I'm older, I realise what's more valuable and what can help me more than anything else. So there you go.
Inspiring the next generation of coaches and inspiring kids as well. You are a multifaceted guy right now, Tony Annan.
Well, let's hope 21's better than 20.
Well, we got to get more kids' books out of you, and we've got to get more performances like we saw out of Atlanta United 2 out of you and your teams. It was a pleasure to call the games this season, both with you and Steven on the touchline for the twos. I love being involved with Atlanta United too. I love seeing the stories of the Coleman Gannons and the Caleb Wileys and Jackson Conway and all the academy kids who come through because, look, that's what the club's all about. It's all about developing not just the great talents that come into the club from overseas, but the kids who come into the club and become icons. And that's, I think the twos are such a vital part of that. I'm just lucky to get a chance to call the games and try to tell the story. So thanks for all the work that you put in to allow that story to be a fun one to tell.
No, we appreciate having you involved and having somebody who's as passionate about it as we are. And you do an unbelievable job of that. So we thank you for that as well.
Well, we'll have more conversations here on SDH, I am sure. You've got a lot of academy work to do, and we'll touch base before the year is out on another 1v1 to kind of recap the crazy fall of the academy and how nuts the rest of it could be as you figure it out on the fly.
Look forward to it.